Hey, is it working? I think it is. What's up guys, Mike here coming at you with another video. This one is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be a hiking video this time. So I know, surprise, right? So I hope you guys can appreciate the fact that this video is going to be a little bit different than my typical videos, which are traditionally hiking videos, as you probably noticed, with the exceptional occasional travel videos, which is actually what this one is going to be about. So for those of you that don't know, Andrew and I got married, if you can't tell by the little ring on my finger. And like most traditional couples, after they get married, they go on a honeymoon. And our honeymoon, we actually went to Italy for it. We were there for about 10 days. We went to the Tuscany region of Italy, and we went to Cinque Terre region, which is more like northwestern Italy along the coast. And I decided to take the camera with me, of course, because I like to film stuff and I like to travel, and, well, I like to travel, but I also like to take photos and videos of where I go and share it with you guys. Now, keep in mind, this was our honeymoon, so I didn't really film this kind of like a vlogging style video like I did for like the Berkshires trip or anything like that. So I hope you guys appreciate the fact that this video is going to be a little bit different. I basically just took a bunch of videos and photos, and I'm just going to narrate it for you on what we did on our trip here, because if you're ever interested in going to Italy, this might be a good guide for you, and it also might just, you know, let you into our lives a little bit. A little bit more. So with that, let's just start with day one. I mean, first off, day one, it was the day after the wedding, so we got hitched, and then we decided to go home right after the wedding. We packed up all of our stuff. The next day, we were catching the flight out, did a little bit of finishing packing in the morning, and then hit the plane. The plane ride over was actually quite good. Nothing too crazy. Had some food on the plane, because those overnight flights and everything like that overseas, you get a little meal on the plane, which was great. Landed in Italy in the morning. We actually landed in Rome first, and then we had to catch a little connecting flight to get to Florence, which is where we were going to pick up the car, and then from there we were going to go to the hotel. So there was a little bit of layover in Rome. We had our first espresso in Italy in the Rome airport. I had a little donut too, I think it was a hazelnut cream donut. Then once we landed, we had to get the car, and most things in Italy are in English, and most people speak English. So if you are a native English speaker and you don't know much Italian or any Italian, it's really not that complicated to get over there. You drive on the right side of the road. It was almost like driving in the US, really. I will say though, and this is something I think my friend Joe mentioned to me as well, Italy drivers, they're not aggressive per se, but when you're in the passing lane, they will be up on your butt waiting for you to pass somebody and get over in the right lane. It's not like here in the US, somebody puts on cruise control, stays in the left lane all the time and just sits there, barely going above the speed limit. So keep that in mind if you ever do drive over in Italy. Otherwise, everything else is pretty ordinary. It was pretty easy to get around. I will say though that for my part of the trip, my phone had no service. So because of that, I was kind of screwed. Luckily, Andrea's did have a cell phone service, so we were able to use her map and her phone to guide us around pretty much the whole entire time. That being said, we got to Italy, we got to Florence, we picked up the car. I got to drive a manual for the first time in a couple years, so that was a lot of fun. Well, the car itself wasn't that much fun, but it was at least fun to drive a manual again. But once we picked up the car, we went to our first hill town. Actually, we just kind of stumbled across it, really. It was a Monteriggioni. I don't know exactly, I think that's how you say it. But Monteriggioni, it was just one of those ones we happened to be driving. We saw it, it looked pretty neat, and it was our first hill town that we saw really off the main highway. So we figured, what the heck, we'll just try it. So we pulled off the car, stopped at a parking lot down at the bottom of the hill, and then started walking up the hill to the hill town, because one thing I do know is when you explore these hill towns, there's really not a lot of parking inside the town itself. Most of the time you have to park outside and either walk to it or maybe take a bus or like a train to get to the top part of the town. So once we got into the town, we just explored around a little bit. We saw the beautiful views, of course. We were pretty hungry at that point, so we actually stopped to get food and ended up being this cool little restaurant. I don't remember the name of it now. It's probably in the video that I'm posting here, or I'll put it on the screen or something like that. But it ended up being like a really cool place. I got some beef lasagna. We had an appetizer with wine and cheese. Actually, sorry, it was honey and cheese, not really wine and cheese. And she had, I forget what it was, I think it was the cacao de pepa, or cacao. I feel like cacao is like the cacao demons from Doom or something like that. But she got that. It was a basically cracked pepper pasta. It was fantastic. So we just got to sit back, relax, enjoy it. It was in the shade, which was another wonderful thing, because one of the things that you might not notice or might not pick up from the video, maybe you could, it's sunny, it's hot out. We went there at the basically middle of August, which was not only Italy's peak travel season, but also one of their hottest summers. And most of the days that we were there ended up being well into the 90s, and it even did break 100 degrees Fahrenheit a couple times while we were there. So bear that in mind, it's hot the whole entire time. Anyway, getting back to the meal. So the meal was great. We had a good time there. We just walked around for a little bit, enjoyed the scenery, saw the hilltop view. We just rummaged around a little bit, went into some of the shops, saw some of the cute leather shoes that they had there, all the multicoloredness of the shoes and everything. Marveled at how old everything was, and then went back down the hill to the car to make our way to the actual hotel, which was Castello Bonfi, which we were going to stay in for the next couple days. And let me tell you, this place is quite impressive. It's basically a 12th or 13th century renovated castle into a hotel. So the room structure is a little bit weird, but it was pretty cool. You actually ended up looking like you're staying in a castle. It's technically a wine resort. The Bonfi wine you can get here in the US as well if you go to like a Wegmans or something like that. The service was fantastic. They were super nice. They were very, very helpful for things that you want to do. That being said though, the first day, we were still a little bit tired, but we ended up just chilling out. It was still pretty early by the time we got there. I think it was like mid-afternoon at that point. And we ended up just staying at the hotel for a couple hours just to unwind, unpack, set our things, try to get used to the time zone at that point. We sat by the pool because the pool overlooked the valley and everything. It was quite impressive. I really, really enjoyed it. We ended up doing that for a little bit before we decided to go out for dinner. And this dinner we had at the restaurant that was actually on the premises. And it was a pretty good meal. It wasn't as good as the previous meal that we had, but it was pretty tasty nonetheless. And of course, they had a lot of like little treats and things like that that they would give you. And the service was fantastic. I mean, it's kind of like a fine dining experience. And another thing too, in Italy, they don't really like bother you too much while you're eating. They'll come over periodically just to check on you. Maybe if they see a glass is empty, they'll come over and ask for a refill. But they don't like pester you to get out of the seat or anything like that. They want you to stay there and enjoy yourself. Okay, so that was our first night there. The next morning we got to enjoy breakfast at the hotel, which again overlooked the valley. And keep in mind, at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's already like 90-some degrees, or at least high 80s at that point. It's pretty hot. We had a great breakfast there, fantastic, great way to start the day. It's kind of like buffet style, so there's no limit for anything. You can order food if you want, which is what we did. I forget exactly what I got, but it was great. It was a good time, and that set us up for our trip out. We try to eat heavier breakfast so that way we can have a lighter lunch because we'll be out doing something. So the first day, and this was our first full day in Italy, we had some tours booked. We actually had a tour booked in Pisa. So we were going to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Basilica there, as well as the baptistry. And there's also a probably lesser known, I guess, cemetery kind of on the side as well. And this tour helped explore all of that. So we got some pretty cool tidbits of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the surrounding area, which if you ever do go to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, make sure you get a tour there. There's a lot more there than just the Leaning Tower itself. I mean, even though that is a pretty fascinating history and how much marble and counterweight they have to make sure that thing stays where it is and doesn't tilt over anymore. It's a fascinating story just behind that. But there's a lot more to it. I mean, for instance, inside the basilica, the church itself, there's actually a lamp, or like I guess a lantern there. And supposedly that was the lantern that Galileo looked at and saw that it was swaying back and forth in the wind that was coming through the open doors of the church. And that's when he basically discovered kind of like the laws of the pendulum and things like that. That was pretty interesting. I think they call that Galileo's lantern or something like that inside that church. So that's a fascinating little tidbit that we didn't know. Along with that, the baptistry is also quite interesting. Just getting through there and seeing it, just seeing all this old stuff. And you got a great view of the church from the upper windows as well. And you can actually see the Leaning Tower just to the right of it, and you can see it's kind of like on a lean, of course. So that's really fascinating. Another thing is when you go to visit and you tour the cemetery area, it's not typical cemetery like you'd see here in the U.S. where it's like gravestones and stuff like that. There's a lot of Roman sarcophaguses in there, brought over from the wealthy guys because Pisa was a very wealthy town. They want to get buried in the Romanesque style or whatever you want to call it. Also, some of the oldest frescoes, I think, in the Renaissance era are in that area as well. There's also a very famous depiction of Dante's Inferno. Pretty fascinating stuff, to be honest with you. So it's really cool to see that. And then, of course, after that, we got to go up and into the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Another tidbit of information, if you book the tour in advance, you get to do the skip the line tours, which I would highly recommend because the lines were fairly long to get into these places. So we went up to the Leaning Tower, and for sure when you're walking up it you could see the lean, and as you're going from side to side you could feel it leaning one way or the other. And when you're on top, I did a walk around up top, you can see, maybe you can see it in the video, like how it's leaning towards one side.
Sì, sì, allez, vague. Mince, il y a des steaks partout, on va nettoyer.
So it's pretty fascinating, it's pretty like weird to be up there and having it walk on a lean, or walking while it's leaning, so I don't know. It was pretty interesting though, and you got a really good view of the Tuscany area, like the actual city of Pisa. After we got done with the tour of the Pisa, we went to a pizza place right behind the Leaning Tower of Pisa that Andrew found, which ended up having like some of the best pizza we've had. You had to basically eat it with a knife and fork, but it was great pizza. We absolutely loved it. We just explored the little downtown area of Pisa with the river running through it. Saw some horse-drawn carriages walking through. I got some gelato just because I wanted some gelato because it was hot and it melted like almost instantly as soon as I got it, so oh well. But it ended up being really good. And then after that we decided to bid adieu to Pisa and head back to the hotel. So we just did a quick drive. Again, I think Pisa at that point from our hotel was about an hour and a half away, if I remember correctly. So we just relaxed and then got up early the next day to go out and explore again. So that was essentially day one of our trip, was going to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I'm going to actually break the video up into several videos over the course of the time because we were over there for like I think 10 days total, so it's a lot to shove into a YouTube video. So that being said, if you guys do like the channel, if you do like the videos that I'm putting out, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe for future content, and of course, I hope you just enjoyed this video.